The sky of Sereth burned red and gold beneath its twin suns. The light shimmered across the silver sand plains, where thousands of soldiers stood ready. The air was heavy with heat and fear. On one side stood the Sarathi army, tall, elegant beings with armor that gleamed like glass, and among them, wearing dull gray armor scratched by 100 battles, stood one human, Sergeant Ryan Hale of Earth. He had fought in many wars, but none like this. The enemy was the Clith, a race of scaled monsters that moved like shadows and used poison as their main weapon. They wanted the Sarathi throne. They wanted their queen dead. And today, Ryan's only job was to make sure that didn't happen. He stood near a great tent made of shimmering fabric that moved like liquid silver. Inside sat Queen Lyra Shen, ruler of the Sarathi Empire. To Ryan, she didn't seem like a ruler. She seemed like something out of a dream, tall and graceful, her skin glowing faintly under the suns, her eyes like melted silver. She moved with quiet dignity, but there was sadness in her gaze. Perhaps because war had taken too much from her people. Ryan adjusted his rifle and tried not to stare. He had guarded generals, admirals, and even presidents before, but never someone who looked like she was carved from light. He didn't understand her customs, her symbols, or her strange way of speaking, but courage, loyalty, and honor were things that didn't need translation. He had made a promise: protect her at all costs. Then the battle began. The horizon erupted with dark shapes, Clith soldiers, screaming as they charged. Plasma bolts and burning arrows cut through the air. The ground trembled beneath explosions. The Sarathi soldiers moved like flowing rivers, their blades glowing blue. Ryan fired his rifle again and again, covering the queen's guards. He could smell the metallic taste of blood in the air. Through the chaos, he heard the queen's voice shouting orders, calm and clear, even as death reigned around them. She was not hiding behind walls. She stood tall, leading her people from the front. Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. She's not like the others, he thought. She's brave. Then it happened. From the far ridge, a Clith sniper drew a black arrow. It hissed through the air like a serpent, cutting straight toward the queen. Her guards didn't see it in time, but Ryan did. He didn't think. He didn't move by reason, only instinct. He lunged forward, throwing himself between the arrow and the queen. The poisoned tip pierced deep into his shoulder. Pain exploded through him like fire. He fell to one knee, his breath leaving him in a gasp. The queen's eyes widened. "Human!" she cried, her voice trembling for the first time. She caught him as he stumbled, her hands glowing faintly as she tried to pull the arrow free. But the poison had already entered his blood, dark veins spreading across his arm. Ryan could barely see her face. His vision blurred, the twin suns spinning above. Still, he managed a small smile. "Guess I did my job," he whispered. "Foolish human," she said, voice breaking. "Why would you do this?" He tried to laugh but coughed instead. "Because that's what we do." Her silver eyes glistened with tears. She shouted for her healers, her voice carrying across the battlefield. The Sarathi soldiers rallied with renewed fury, driving back the Clith as their queen knelt beside the fallen human who had saved her. As the healers lifted him, Ryan caught a final glimpse of her, kneeling in the sand, her white robe stained with his blood, her eyes locked on him as if she feared that if she blinked, he'd disappear. The battle faded into silence. The suns lowered. When Ryan finally closed his eyes, he heard her whisper softly in a voice that trembled like wind over glass. "Do not die, human. Not after this. You are too brave to die so soon." And then everything went dark. Ryan woke to the sound of soft music and the scent of strange flowers. The air was cool, almost too clean. For a moment he thought he was dead. But then the pain came, sharp, deep, and burning in his arm. His eyes opened to a room of silver light. The walls seemed alive, glowing faintly like moonlit water. He tried to move, but his arm screamed in pain. A gentle hand pressed him back down. "Rest, human," said a calm voice. Ryan blinked. Queen Lyra Shen sat beside him, dressed not in royal armor but in soft white robes. Her silver eyes looked tired, and her hair, long and shimmering, fell over her shoulders. She didn't look like a queen now. She looked like someone who hadn't slept for days. "You're here," he whispered weakly. "You shouldn't be. You have a whole army to run." She gave a small, almost sad smile. "You're under my care. I go where my savior lies. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a painful groan. Savior? I just took a bad hit. Her gaze hardened. That arrow carried Clith poison. No Sarathi has ever survived such a wound. Ryan looked at his arm. His skin was wrapped in glowing bandages, faint blue light pulsing beneath. The veins around the wound were still dark, but he could feel warmth spreading, something fighting the poison. I'm still breathing, he muttered. Guess we humans are too stubborn to die. That made her pause. Then to his surprise, she laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in rain. Too stubborn, she repeated, shaking her head. Perhaps that is your strength. He watched her closely. There was something strange in the way she looked at him. Curiosity, respect, and something gentler. Something almost human. How long was I out? He asked. 3 rotations of the suns, she said quietly. You slept through the victory. Victory? Yes, when you fell, my people saw your sacrifice. They fought with a fire I have never seen. The Clith were driven back beyond the dunes. They call you Ryan the Brave now, a name of honor. Ryan gave a faint smile. I like that better than the guy who almost died. For the first time, her lips curved in a genuine smile. It reached her eyes. You are strange, human. You bleed, you hurt, and yet you still joke. He shrugged weakly. Humor helps. It's how we survive. She looked down at his bandaged arm and said softly, You were not meant to fight our battles, and yet you saved me twice, once from death and again from despair. Her words hit him harder than the poison. He didn't know what to say, so he looked away, staring at the glowing patterns on the ceiling. I just did what was right, he murmured. Didn't matter who you were. That is what makes it matter, she replied gently. For a while, silence filled the chamber. Outside, he could hear distant songs, the voices of Sarathi healers, low and rhythmic. He wondered if they sang for the wounded or for the dead. Then the queen spoke again, her voice quiet. When I saw you fall, I thought my heart would stop. I have seen many warriors die, but never one who shielded me without hesitation. Tell me, human, why did you do it? Ryan turned his head to face her.
Because it was the right thing to do.
Because where I come from, protecting someone who can't defend themselves, that's what makes us human. Her silver eyes softened, reflecting the light like liquid glass. Perhaps that is why your kind is feared and admired. He smiled faintly. Feared? We're just flesh and bone. And yet, she whispered, you survived a poison that kills gods. Her words hung in the air. That night, she stayed by his side. She sang softly in her native tongue, a melody that sounded like waves touching shore. Though he didn't understand the words, the emotion was clear. Sadness, hope, and something tender, something fragile. Ryan drifted to sleep listening to her voice. And before darkness took him again, he thought he felt her hand gently rest over his. Light as air, but warm, real. Outside the chamber, the twin suns sank below the horizon, and the city of Sarath glowed in silver light. A soldier from Earth had survived what no alien could, and in the heart of a distant queen, something began to change, something she could not yet name. The city of Sarath shimmered under the morning suns. From the queen's balcony, the view was breathtaking, silver towers rising from the sands, banners fluttering in the soft wind, and distant airships gliding between crystal spires. But inside the palace, peace was a fragile thing. Whispers spread like wildfire. They whispered about the human. They whispered about Ryan the Brave, the soldier from a small blue world who had saved their queen's life. Some called him a hero. Others called him a danger. Queen Lyra Shen walked through the grand hall, her robe of white and silver flowing behind her. Her steps were calm, but her eyes were shadowed with thought. The council had summoned her that morning, an emergency session. She already knew what it was about. Ryan walked beside her, still healing but refusing to stay in bed. His arm was wrapped in clean white bandages, and his armor was polished though scratched from battle. The guards around him looked uneasy. No outsider had ever stood inside the royal chamber. As the doors opened, the council members, tall Sarathi elders with jeweled robes, turned their sharp, glowing eyes toward him. The High Minister rose, his voice heavy and cold. Your Majesty, this cannot continue. You allow this human near the throne, near you, as if he were one of us. Ryan stiffened, but before he could speak, the queen raised her hand. He is one of us. He bled for this empire. He saved your ruler. That makes him more Sarathi than many who sit here in safety. The minister's expression hardened. He is not of our blood. You cannot let emotion cloud judgment. This creature comes from a world of war and chaos. Do you think he understands our ways? Ryan looked at the queen. I don't, he said quietly, stepping forward. I don't understand your ways. I don't understand your songs, your stars, or your rules, but I understand loyalty, and I understand what it means to keep a promise. The council chamber fell silent. Even the light from the crystal windows seemed to pause. I didn't jump in front of that arrow because she's a queen, Ryan continued, voice steady. I did it because she's a person, someone worth saving. The queen's eyes glistened with pride. She looked at him, then back at her council. You see? He speaks truth without fear. That is strength. But the council was unmoved. Another elder leaned forward. Strength can be dangerous, my queen. The people talk. They say you spend too much time with him. That your heart is changing. Lyra Shen's jaw tightened. My heart belongs to my people, and this human risked his life for them. For me, is that not worth respect? The chamber filled with low murmurs. The council could not argue with her words, but neither could they hide their unease. A human standing so close to the queen broke every rule, every ancient law of the Sarathi Empire. After the meeting ended, Ryan followed the queen into her private garden. The air was cooler there, filled with glowing vines and gentle blue light. She stood by a pond where silver fish glided under the water's surface. They fear what they don't understand, she said softly. My people have always believed they are above others. Your courage, your kindness, it confuses them. Ryan knelt to touch the glowing water. Back home we have the same problem. People fear what's different, but fear fades once they see who you really are. She looked at him, her eyes softening. And what do you see when you look at me, Ryan Hale? He smiled faintly. I see someone who leads with her heart, not just her crown. Her breath caught for a moment. She turned away, pretending to watch the fish, but a faint shimmer of emotion passed across her face. For a long time they stood in silence. The garden lights flickered like fireflies. The twin suns slowly began to set, painting the sky with gold and rose colors. Finally she spoke again, her voice quiet. You are different from any being I have known. When I'm near you, I forget that we are not the same. Ryan looked at her, unsure what to say. The air between them felt warm and alive. Then she whispered, almost to herself, Perhaps that is what makes you human. And though she said it softly, Ryan felt the weight of it deep inside. In that moment he realized this wasn't just duty anymore. Something was changing between them, something fragile and dangerous but beautiful all the same. The night was calm, too calm for a palace that had survived war. The twin moons hung low over Sarath, their silver light washing the gardens in ghostly glow. Queen Lyra Shen walked alone beneath the glowing vines, her robe trailing softly across the stone path. For the first time in weeks, she was without her guards. She said she needed air. She said she wanted silence. But in truth, her heart was restless. Ever since the council meeting, whispers had followed her wherever she went. Whispers about the human who had saved her life. She told herself she was not troubled by their words. Yet when she closed her eyes, it was always his face she saw. The man who had taken a poisoned arrow for her, who had looked at her not as a queen but as someone worth saving. Ryan Hale. He was somewhere nearby, she knew. He never went far. Even when she ordered him to rest, he found excuses to walk the corridors, to make sure everything was safe. Humans were strange that way, restless, stubborn, endlessly loyal. As she reached the heart of the garden, she paused beside a crystal fountain. The water glowed faintly blue, reflecting her pale face. She sighed softly, whispering to herself, What are you doing, Lyra Shen? You are a queen. He is a soldier. This cannot be. Her voice trembled slightly. For the first time in years, she felt unsure of herself. Not as a ruler, but as a woman. Then behind her a sound. Soft, quick, wrong. Her eyes widened. She turned, too late. A shadow moved from behind the vines, fast and silent. A figure cloaked in darkness, its blade shining green with poison. Before the assassin could strike, a voice shouted, rough and human, down. Ryan burst from the path, tackling the queen to the ground just as the blade sliced through the air where her heart had been. The assassin hissed like an animal and lunged again. Ryan rolled, pulling his plasma sidearm from his belt and firing a bolt of blue light. The shot grazed the assassin's shoulder, sending sparks flying. The creature moved with unnatural speed, striking again with twin knives. Ryan blocked one, but the other cut across his back, tearing through armor and skin. He grunted in pain but didn't stop. "Stay down," he shouted to the queen, his voice sharp but desperate. She watched in shock as he fought, bleeding yet fearless, moving like a storm. Every strike he blocked pushed him closer to collapse. The poison from the last wound had barely left his body, and now new blood ran down his back. The assassin lunged again, aiming for his throat. Ryan twisted, grabbed its arm, and slammed it into a stone pillar. The blade dropped from its hand. In one swift motion, Ryan raised his sidearm and fired. A bright flash, a scream. Then silence. The smell of burnt air hung heavy around them. The assassin fell, lifeless, its weapon clattering to the ground. Ryan breathed hard, lowering his gun. His knees nearly buckled. He turned toward the queen, who was still kneeling on the ground, her eyes wide with shock. "You all right?" he asked, his voice strained. She stared at him, then ran forward, catching him before he fell. "You're hurt," she whispered, her hands trembling as she touched the blood on his back. He gave a weak smile. "It's just a scratch," her voice broke. "You protected me again. You could have died again." He tried to laugh but winced. "Guess it's becoming a bad habit." Her hands glowed faintly as she pressed them against his wound. "Why do you do this?" she whispered, her voice filled with both anger and sorrow. "You risk your life again and again, and for what?" He looked at her, his eyes soft despite the pain. "Because someone has to. Because I couldn't stand by and let anything happen to you." Her breath caught. The glow from her hands flickered as her control faltered. She turned away slightly, hiding the tears that filled her eyes. "Your people would call me a fool," he murmured. She looked back at him, voice trembling. "Then they are fools. You are more than they can understand." The night wind moved through the garden, carrying the scent of blood and moonlight. Ryan stood weakly, still holding his weapon. The queen's hands lingered on his arm as if she was afraid to let go. Somewhere far away, guards shouted, racing toward them, but in that small moment, it felt like only the two of them existed, one human soldier and one alien queen. Their hearts beating in the same rhythm under the same silver light. And though neither spoke it aloud, both knew the truth that now lived quietly between them. It was no longer just duty that bound them. It was something deeper, something dangerous, something real. The days after the attack passed in silence, but the memory of that night never left Queen Lyrishen's mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flash of the assassin's blade, and the human who threw himself in its path without hesitation. She told herself she was calm, but her heart betrayed her. Whenever Ryan entered the room, she felt that calm vanish, replaced by a strange warmth that she could not name. He was still recovering, his back wrapped in clean white bandages, but he refused to rest for long. Every morning he stood outside her chamber, alert and watchful as if nothing had changed except everything had. One evening, she found him in the palace courtyard, adjusting his armor under the fading glow of the twin suns. His uniform was simple compared to the shining robes of her guards. Yet to her it looked right, earned through courage, not birth. "You shouldn't be moving yet," she said softly as she approached. Ryan turned and smiled faintly. "You keep saying that, but I heal faster than most." She folded her arms, pretending to be stern. "You humans are reckless," he chuckled. "Yeah, maybe that's what keeps us alive." Her lips curved almost against her will. Alive, yes, but also constantly in danger. He looked at her for a moment, his eyes steady, then said quietly, "Danger's worth it, if it means keeping you safe." Her heart skipped. She looked away quickly, pretending to adjust her robe. "You should not say such things, Ryan Hale. My people might misunderstand." "Let them," he said softly. "I mean every word." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind brushed through the glowing vines, filling the silence with soft music. Finally, she turned back to him. "When you first arrived here, I thought you were only another soldier. You spoke little. You followed orders. I did not expect you to change anything. And now?" he asked gently. Her voice trembled slightly. "Now I cannot imagine this palace without you in it." Ryan looked down, unsure how to answer. His heart felt heavy and light all at once. "You know, back on Earth we have a saying," he murmured. "Sometimes people meet by chance, but it feels like it was always meant to happen." She tilted her head, curious. "Do you believe that?" He nodded slowly. I didn't, until I met you. Her breath caught, and for a moment her royal mask slipped. The strong queen faded, and the woman beneath showed, soft, vulnerable, unsure. She stepped closer, her silver eyes glimmering in the light. Your words are dangerous, human. He smiled faintly. So is the truth. A faint silence hung between them, charged and fragile. Then one of her attendants appeared at the edge of the courtyard, bowing deeply. My queen, the council awaits your decision on the border treaty. Lyra Shen blinked, her royal face returning. I will come shortly. The attendant bowed again and left. When she turned back to Ryan, her voice was quiet, almost sad. Duty never sleeps, even when the heart wishes it could. Ryan nodded slowly. I get it. Duty first, right? She looked at him for a long time, then whispered, perhaps not always. That night, she stood by her balcony overlooking the sleeping city. The lights of Serath sparkled like stars across the dunes, yet for all its beauty, she felt a hollow ache inside her chest. She thought of Ryan's tired smile, of his quiet bravery, of the way his rough human hands had trembled when he saved her life. Her advisors called him a mercenary. The court called him a distraction, but she called him something else in her heart. She called him hope, because when she was near him, the weight of her crown felt lighter. When he spoke, she forgot for a moment that she was alone. Why are you in my thoughts? She whispered to the night. Why does your name feel like a heartbeat in my chest? But the night gave no answer. Only the wind replied, carrying faint echoes of laughter, the sound of a human soldier's voice somewhere in the palace halls. And the queen, for the first time in her long, disciplined life, smiled without realizing it. She didn't know where this feeling would lead. All she knew was that the line between protector and beloved was fading fast, and neither duty nor distance could stop it, because sometimes, even in the farthest stars, a heart finds its echo in another. The palace was quiet that morning, but not peaceful. The air felt heavy like the calm before a storm. Word had spread through every hall and corridor. The council had called an emergency session. Queen Lyra Shen sat in her chamber, staring at her reflection in a mirror made of crystal. Her silver eyes looked calm, but deep inside her heart was in turmoil. She knew what this meeting was about. She knew what they would say. Her attendants tried to comfort her, but she raised a hand. Leave me, she said softly. I must face them alone. When she stepped into the grand council hall, the air grew colder. The room was vast, filled with the echo of ancient power. 12 council members stood waiting, their robes glowing faintly under the sunlight that filtered through the crystal windows. Their faces were carved with disapproval. Ryan stood at the far end near the door, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked out of place among them, human, rough, scarred, yet standing tall with quiet dignity. The High Minister bowed stiffly. Your Majesty, he began, we gather not in disrespect but in concern. Lyra Shen's voice was calm. Speak your concern. The minister's eyes flicked toward Ryan. It is about him. This human. You keep him close, against tradition, against reason. The people are talking. They question your judgment. They whisper that you are distracted. The queen's expression didn't change, but Ryan saw the way her fingers tightened around the edge of her robe. Distracted? She repeated softly. He saved my life twice. His courage inspired our soldiers to victory. If that is distraction, then I welcome it. Another counselor, old and sharp, stepped forward. He is not one of us, Majesty. His presence near the throne is dangerous. We cannot allow foreign blood to stain our royal court. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He knew this wasn't his fight to speak in, at least, not yet. The High Minister bowed again, his tone formal but cold. The council's decision is clear. You must dismiss him from your service. Send him back to his world. It is the only way to protect your honor and your rule. Silence filled the hall. Every pair of eyes turned toward the queen. Her heart pounded, but her voice, when it came, was steady. You speak of honor as if it is something fragile. Honor is not born from fear, it is forged in truth. The minister frowned. Then tell us the truth, your majesty. What is he to you? Lyra Shen turned slowly, her gaze finding Ryan's across the vast chamber. For a moment, the world seemed to fade, the council, the walls, the politics, until only he remained. What is he to me? She whispered, her voice trembling just slightly. He is the one who showed me what courage truly means. He is the one who reminded me that power is not strength, Heart is. Gasps filled the hall. Several counselors exchanged shocked looks. The queen took a deep breath and stepped forward, her silver robe flowing like liquid light. "Sergeant Ryan Hale of Earth," she said clearly. "You stood before death twice to protect me. You gave your blood for a world not your own. My people may not understand your kind, but I do. I owe you more than life. I owe you trust." Ryan blinked, stunned. "Your Majesty." She lifted a hand to silence him, her voice stronger now. "You once told me humans love fiercely, that when you care for someone you give them everything. I have learned that truth from you." The council murmured in confusion. The High Minister took a step forward. "Your Majesty, what are you saying?" She looked at Ryan, her expression soft but resolute. "I am saying that I, Queen Lyra Shen of Serath, no longer see him as only a protector, but as the one I choose to stand beside me." The room erupted in noise, shouts, disbelief, outrage. But she didn't flinch. Ryan stood frozen. "Your Majesty, you can't—" "I can," she interrupted gently. "And I will." Her eyes glistened with emotion, but her voice was steady as she spoke the words that would shake the Empire. "Sergeant Ryan Hale, I ask you to become my consort, my partner in life and in rule." The hall fell utterly silent. Ryan's breath caught in his chest. For a moment he thought he hadn't heard her right. The Great Council stood in shock, unable to speak. The Queen took a single step toward him, her eyes never leaving his. "You have given me your loyalty, your courage, your heart. Let me give you mine in return." And under the light of the twin suns streaming through the crystal walls, the soldier and the Queen stood facing each other, not as ruler and protector, but as two souls who had found something greater than duty. The silence in the grand hall felt endless. Every eye was on Ryan, every breath held. The Queen's words still echoed in the air, her proposal, her defiance, her heart laid bare for all to see. Ryan stood frozen. He had faced alien beasts, gunfire, and war, but this moment broke through every wall he had built inside himself. He looked at her, Lyra Shen, the Queen of 1,000 worlds, standing proud, her eyes soft yet burning with determination. She wasn't just a ruler now. She was a woman choosing something real, something forbidden but true. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. For a moment he saw flashes of everything they had been through. The night she was almost killed, the cold touch of the poisoned arrow, her trembling hand as he carried her through the storm. He remembered the sound of her heartbeat against his chest when she whispered that she wasn't afraid anymore. And now, "This, Your Majesty," he began quietly, his voice rough and full of emotion. "I'm just a soldier. I don't belong in a throne room. I don't belong beside you." Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. "And yet you are the only one who ever stood there when I was most alone." The High Minister shouted, "This is madness!" "A human cannot share our throne." Lyra Shen turned to him sharply, her voice like a blade. "Enough, the Council has spoken its fears. Now hear mine. I fear a world without courage, without heart. I will not rule in fear." The Council fell silent again. Ryan's heart thudded painfully. Every part of him wanted to walk away, to save her from the chaos this choice would bring. But another part, deeper, stronger, whispered that she was not just a queen to him anymore, she was his home. He took a slow step forward. The guards tensed, but the Queen lifted her hand, stopping them. Ryan's boots echoed across the polished crystal floor. His eyes never left hers. When he finally stood before her, the distance between them was only a heartbeat. He looked into her silver eyes and saw no fear, only hope. "I can't promise you peace," he said softly. "I can't promise I'll understand all your ways. But I can promise this, I'll stand beside you, no matter what it costs." Her breath caught, a faint tremor running through her lips. "Then you accept?" He nodded slowly. "I do, Lyra." The sound that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. Gasps, disbelief, even the faint hum of power from the walls themselves, as if the palace felt the weight of history being written. The Queen stepped closer, her hand trembling as she reached up to touch his cheek. "Then let all of Serath hear it," she whispered. "The human and the Queen stand as one." Outside in the city of crystal towers, the sound of the royal horns echoed through the air. People looked up, confused, then amazed as the royal banners changed, two symbols entwined: the sigil of the Sarathi crown and the mark of the human-earth division. In the following days, the galaxy would argue, rage, and marvel, but inside the palace there was quiet joy. Ryan stood on the balcony beside her, watching the twin suns sink into the horizon. The sky turned golden violet, reflecting off her silver hair. He looked down at the crowd far below. Thousands of Sarathi citizens all gathered to witness the union they once thought impossible. Lyra Shen turned to him, her voice soft and full of warmth. "Do you regret it?" He smiled faintly. "Not even for a second." She leaned closer, her forehead touching his. "Then let the stars be witness," she whispered. "That love can exist even between worlds." For a moment the universe felt still. No war, no council, no fear. Just two hearts, human and alien, standing together against everything that said they shouldn't. That night, as the ceremony began, the Queen placed a silver circlet on Ryan's head. It shimmered faintly under the starlight. "From this day," she declared, her voice echoing through the great hall, "Serath and Earth are